All right, well, we're back. Level One Coach Podcast, Drew and Mikkel. And today we're going to lead off with the Henry Ford Razor. And I'm going to start with the Razor, and then I'm going to add some context, and then I'm going to kick it over to my partner. So, the Henry Ford Razor is when given the option between two equal candidates on skill set. Choose the person that is being over the one who is doing. So the story goes like this. Henry Ford is hiring for an engineering position, and he believes in his mind that the candidates are equal on engineering skill set. And he's trying to determine how he's going to go about choosing one over the other one, which one's going to have edge. And the 5D chess move that he plays is tapping into who's an integrous person and who's not an integrous person, and if that will come out. So he just takes them to dinner and takes them both to dinner. So it's Henry Ford and candidate, call them candidate A and B, sitting at a table. So there's three of them. And the entire time he keeps the conversation away from engineering, so they don't get to kind of give themselves an edge, say something that they haven't already said, and get the position on the engineering bucket of skill set. So they just talk about like current events, whatever's going on at the time. And towards the end of the meal, Henry looks at candidate A and says, "You have the job." And candidate B asks the typical like survey on your way out question, like, why didn't I get the job? And Henry Ford cites two things. And the first thing that he says is, when the stakes were presented to us at the table, the candidate that I chose tried the steak first, and he didn't put additional salt or pepper or seasoning that's at the table on the steak. He tried it first, and as soon as the steak was served to you, without trying it, you put salt on the steak. And what that might tell me is that in my company, when you get onboarded and you're part of it, you might start to change things that already work without testing to see how well they're working first. And I don't know if I necessarily want to take that risk. And then the second reason that he cited was an integrity energy thing. So the candidate that he hired, whether the waiter came to the table and refilled a water glass, whether he put a steak knife down, whether he cleared plates, anytime the waiter came and did something for them, he said thank you. And he said, Henry Ford said, you, on the other hand, treated the waiter like he didn't exist. He was less than, but you treated me, the person that can offer you something, the person that you have something to gain from. You treated me with the utmost respect. So that tells me that you might not be the most integrous person. So I'm going to read this back to you now, and then I'll kick it to you. The difference between doing and being. So when given the option between two equal candidates on skill set, choose the person that is being over the one that is doing. Thoughts on that?
I love that story, which I didn't know until 25 minutes ago. And it makes me think of a couple things that apply to certainly sports, coaching, hockey, but also just life at large. And the first thing that we didn't even talk about off air, but the whole story is set up with like both of these potential engineers on paper provide almost the same, let's call them benefits and drawbacks. So first and foremost, to me, this is proof that there's more to life than just whatever you're doing, whether it's engineering, coaching, um, whatever path you're in. There's more to you, or there should be more to you as a person than just the industry you work in. And for these two engineers, unbeknownst to them, it was going to be something unrelated to their engineering skills that was going to either make or break their opportunity for this job. And I love that, because he's at the heart of it. What Henry Ford's trying to get at is, how deep can this person go? And when we have, I don't know, back in the day, if there were holiday parties and off campus retreats and all that kind of stuff, but how much does this person know outside of engineering that I can just have a conversation with them? I can enjoy their presence outside of, their 12 hours a day that I see them, or 10 hours a day that I see them doing their job. So I think this goes to show like the value of having more interest outside of whatever your profession is, and being able to go deep on other things outside of just what you love doing. So I really like that, because it just speaks to being a well-rounded person um, that can talk about anything, or that can talk about more things than just one. So I like that. Where I'll go to the two, the kind of like Achilles heel for this candidate B guy. What it makes me think of with the Salt is like, he wants to try things before, or try or change things before he really settles in and even knows what's best. And I think we actually got into this recently on another episode of like, I had mentioned something about a lot of times when new coaches are brought in, they'll say like, we're going to do things differently. We're going to be more disciplined. We're going to play faster. We're going to whatever. And it is at its heart probably good intentioned. I mean, it's definitely good intention. You want to make sure this team gets better, but maybe the discipline isn't the issue here. Maybe the team already plays fast. And a coach that I worked for in the past, actually, I asked him one time, he was a head coach at a young age, under 30. And I asked him one time, like, what were some of the things that for you as a head coach, you thought might be really important that weren't, or that you didn't think were going to be important that were, when you finally became a head coach. And I'll never forget, one of the things he said to me was something that I didn't think that would be important that was getting the job, being a first-time head coach, and not trying to change everything right away. And realizing that I actually need to sit down and listen to the players, and probably some of the administrative people, to find out like what actually makes this place great already, and what do we like about this program in school, before I go and change things. And it was so interesting to me, because like in my mind, I was probably 26, 27 at the time. I'm thinking like, well, you get somewhere and you usually get to a place because things weren't going well before you. So you got to come in and change and make sure that you improve it. And his point was, of course, you need to do that, but maybe everybody loves the fact that they practice in the mornings. And in your mind, that's not a good thing, because everyone's too tired and groggy. And so you want to change it, and you go ahead and change it, not realizing that everyone loved that. Or, you know, extrapolate out from there, and it could be really anything. So the whole idea of like this engineer just throwing salt on something before he even knows if the steak is too salty to begin with, it speaks to that like maybe he's going to get an opportunity to implement a change, and without even knowing if that's going to be good, he's going to go for it. I'll stop there because I do have another thing to say, but I'll stop there because that's enough, I think, for now that I've thrown at you. I'll let you volley back.
Yeah, my quick thing on that before you can continue. The thing that I wrote down is like what that coaching mentor is essentially saying is, if you change something that the players like, we've talked about user experience a ton, and I know that coach has that at the forefront of his decision making, because I know you're talking about, but if you change something that they like, immediately you lose trust. And like we've talked about this, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast, but it's like an anti-goal is don't do something that makes them think that you're an idiot. And if you just go ahead and change something that they all are sitting there like, we love this and we're praying that coach doesn't come in and change this, The easiest thing with the least amount of downside is to have a 2-minute conversation and ask them what they like. And that has tremendous upside in terms of keeping and building trust. Hey, we have a say, we have a voice. And by ignoring that and just choosing, you know what, I put salt on steaks, or for a coach, we're just going to have more accountability, or we're going to play faster. We've heard it when new coaches take over. You have infinite downside in changing something that they like. So you can continue.
For sure. I think as I've said it now on this podcast and before, like I do think it's well intentioned. It's
Mhm.
just a little, it can be tone deaf, or it's a little like head in the clouds. Like you're not always taking the time to stop and ask, like you said, the players, what do you like about this? What do you like about the way we already have played? I mean, you can be a sub 500 team at almost any level and have really positive aspects to your game that don't need to change.
Mhm.
Um, and what a coach may see from the outside, especially from the outside coming in, could be very different than what the players see on a daily basis, playing on the ice. So I think it's super important to take that time. And we talked about this before, but one of the problems or one of the drawbacks of that is that it looks like you're doing nothing. So you get there and your first move isn't to implement a new D zone or implement a new power play. And you're actually taking, let's call it a month to just hear it out from the players, like what works, what doesn't. And it could appear that you're doing nothing. And you're not, but depending on who is judging you and also the level, if you're taking over a Division 3 program, no newscasters are looking at you like, how come you haven't changed the D zone yet? But if you're taking over at the NHL level, I'm sure there's reporters that are looking at this going, how come you haven't done anything? So anyway, there's optics that are involved in that too, that it takes strength or courage to be like, you know what, I'm not changing this day one because I need to find out if this even needs to be changed. So lesson, don't put salt on your steak before you taste it. Um, and then the other piece that comes to mind for me is like there's a value, shouldn't even say there's value, but people who are genuinely good people are always good people. It doesn't matter who they're dealing with. It doesn't matter if you have a job to offer or you're a random person they'll never see again. And even extrapolate that out further, it's a child on the side of the street that is, I don't know, being annoying. Like the way you treat people like that, a little kid, a waiter, someone who has really nothing to offer you long term in life, is how you treat anyone. And it's easy to say like, no, I'm a good person. I'm nice to so and so. I do this for my family, whatever. But um, like people that have something to to offer you back, there's some reciprocity in that. Where if you treat a potential employer well one day, then they may not get the job now, but they may give you a job in the future. Like there's a reason to maybe for this guy, in the engineering example, there's a reason for candidate B to be nice to Henry Ford, because even if he doesn't get the job today, he might 2 years from now. But the waiter is never going to have a job for him in his mind. Um, so why would I be nice? And I think it just gets to something that I think is like fundamentally lacking in a lot of people in society today is like there's no reason to ever treat someone poorly, honestly. You can be upset, things happen, you can be angry, but at the end of the day, if someone cuts you off, if someone screws you over, if someone mismanages something that you thought they were going to handle, like if you treat them with respect and grace and like you said, integrity, then the worst you're going to get out of it is well, there's nothing bad that can come of that, honestly. Um, Whereas if you treat them poorly, like look at what happens to candidate B here. Like now he doesn't get a job all because he doesn't think to say thank you to someone who's bringing him more water or refilling the bread or whatever it might be. So I just think it's my point is that it's easy to be kind to people who you perceive as providing value for you or providing something down the line for you. People that have nothing to offer you today or that may never have anything to offer you, they still deserve the same. That's a human being. And I don't care whether you're coaching in the NFL and this guy works at Waffle House, or you're coaching in the NFL and this guy's the owner of the team. Like, they should both be treated equally. Um, I'm not saying you got to have a relationship with every dude that works at Waffle House, but you can treat them well. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I take away from this story.
Yeah, the thing that I want to throw back at you for your thoughts is there's even like go back to the razor, choose the one that's being over the one that's doing. And if we want to like zoom in on that for a second, because I think what can get misconstrued with people, especially people that are looking to like a lot of level 1 coaches want to move up and they don't want to work in tier 3 forever and they don't want to be where they're at forever. They want to see progress, whether it's because they're literally in poverty with their current salary or it's because they want to challenge themselves at the highest level possible. Whatever the motive is, there's still this difference between, like, for example, candidate B. He could have done the right things. Anyone can do the behavior, few can be the behavior. And what I mean by that is there's an energy, and you have to give people, maybe you have to go out to dinner with them multiple times, and maybe you have to get them in a different context other than dinner and other than in your coaching office doing a formal interview. But if given enough time and space, you will see who people truly are being. Because like if you go to the energy, the power versus force bit, there are a lot of coaches in various sports at different levels that have psychopathic traits, for example, and sociopathic traits. And what those people can do is they can mirror the right behaviors. So that's the doing bit. So candidate B, for example, because he knows he has something to gain, he could have said thank you. And whether that was integrous and true to his nature or not is up to who he actually is all of the time to decide. But there are coaches, and I won't roll any of them in this episode, but there are coaches that there have been things that have come out in the last 5, 6, 10 years where there are some like dark-sided leadership traits, psychopathic behaviors, tendencies, nature in some of these people. And they can fake it until they make it. And that cliche fits there, even though it grosses me out to drop a cliche on the podcast. But there's this difference between doing and being. And that's where I just wanted to add on. And I want to get your thoughts, but I just want to clear that up for anyone that's listening. That it's not necessarily about just being a person that says thank you. It's about, like, air quotes, being a person that says thank you. If you have thoughts on that.
So I think this is a pretty well documented incident and story that came out on a podcast that has millions more followers than this does. So I think it's fair to say this. Johan Franzen and Mike Babcock, that whole ordeal, and I think it occurred in Nashville when he was with Detroit. Both were with Detroit. The difference with doing and being is that, like, you can do some of these things like you're talking about, say thank you, but then if you are someone who just does them, these stories come to light. Oh, actually, like when a guy was struggling with mental health, you were I don't even remember the specifics, but saying brutal things to someone about, I think it was about like whether they're not in shape and whether the team really needs him and all this stuff. Like, if you're candidate A and you are always being the same person, the same person that says thank you, that treats others with respect, that is integrous, like there's no those stories don't come to light. Like there's no former player that's going to be like, yeah, he actually did this one thing, like everyone thinks he's a good guy, but this happened. Like there's just been, and it's not just in coaching. Like there's, look at Hollywood, there's a million industries where things come to light after the fact of, you know, this person who had a, you know, a really successful career or who's in the midst of a successful career might say the right things in a press conference, might treat their star players well, might treat certain personnel and staff members well, but actually they've done a lot of shitty things that you wouldn't know about unless there's some level of whistleblowing going on. And I don't even want to say a name of someone who hasn't done this, because who knows? Like maybe stories will come to light about a guy that we right now think highly of.
Mhm.
But those people that never, in your words, get rolled, that never are you know, called out for the way they treated people or stories of how they treated players in the past, those people are the epitome of being. There is nothing to come out about them because they just don't do that.
Mhm.
They just don't treat people that way. It doesn't cross their mind to come out and say, you know, mean or derogatory things to a guy who's struggling with his mental health playing in the NHL. So the difference between doing and being might just be that those that do will have skeletons in the closet that come out at some point, and those that be that are being, it doesn't exist for them because it just hasn't happened, and it won't happen because there's no reason for them to treat another human being like that. Um, you know, there's levels to that, and maybe it's not entirely true what I'm saying, but I think in a lot of ways, you know, if you're someone who is being, as you're saying, and you're like this candidate A guy that gets the job, like it's going to be hard for anyone to pull out a story of how you treated someone horribly, because you just don't do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I have two examples that come to mind, and I'll tee it up with this. I don't know if we've talked about it on air. We've written an article like introducing this level one concept, but if you guys are new and haven't listened to like the very first episode and haven't read that article, we'll link those. But at level one, like what you and I have and other coaches that are level one coaches, when you're at or near the bottom, um, you get to be, you're the waiter. You get to be the waiter in this situation that we're talking about with Henry Ford. And you hear it all the time. Like I've met people when I've gone and visited USHL teams or talked to people in hockey on the phone. And the first thing you start to ask people when you meet them for the first time is like, you try and find common people in the industry, you know, like where is your network overlap? Oh, I know him. And then as soon as you find that, they're like, oh yeah, like X person is a good guy. X person is a good guy. And what like what started to happen when I met and talked to a USHL coach for the first time in this context was he would say, oh, he's a good guy. And I would have also talked to this person and I've been laughed off the phone by the same person, or I've been told shameful, derogatory things on why I can't coach at that person's level or whatever it was. So then I was like, oh, there's a disconnect here. And why is that? And it's like, oh, the guy I'm talking to has this credibility stamp on his chest. He coaches in the USHL. Drew is currently at the time a former, no, was a current tier 3 coach in the USPHL. So significantly lower air quotes status than the person I'm speaking to. And we're being treated differently. So the unfortunate part about perception, and unless you have level one people in your network, that's a plug for people of higher status that are listening to start talking to people like me and Mikkel's, because we can tell you who the real ones are. 5D chess move on your part if you want to do that. But like ultimately that highlights who people are truly being when the level 1 coaches are the waiters, and the USHL coaches that are saying, great guy, great guy, great guy, they're Henry Ford. And they're the guy with status, and they're the guy that if you're nice to him, he could give you something in the future. And if you're looking for just treating people nicely for status gain and a future USHL job, then you're not an integrous person. So I'm gonna stop there because I kind of went on a little aside, but you can reel that back in if you want.
No, it's 100% true. Like when you're lower on the totem pole and you have less to offer, whether it's the level you're working at or the lack of experience that you have just coming out of playing or college or whatever, like you find out right away who will really help you and who won't, and who is going to treat you well just because they're a good person and they'll treat anyone well, and who's going to treat you well because you have something to offer them now. And I mean, there's plenty of people on both sides. I'd say there's more people on the side of not going to treat you well because you don't have anything to offer them than there is the other. But there are people that are going to treat you well just because they're a good person. Like, it'd be crazy to think that there's only two good people in the world and they're both sitting on this podcast. Like, that's not true.
4
There's
out of 1,000. 4 out of 1,000.
there's plenty of good people out there. It is harder maybe to find them, and it takes time, and you have to be looking. Um, but I think what's interesting is to what you're saying when you're at that level 1 and you don't have much to offer, you find out right away who's really going to help you, and also who's really going to help not just you but others because it's the right thing to do or because that's just in their DNA. Versus people like you said that, well, whether it's laugh you off the phone, not get back to you, don't feel the need to provide something, like whatever it may be, it looks a lot of different, or it can look very different depending on the circumstance. But there's plenty of people that somebody may say, oh yeah, he's a really good guy. Well, he's a really good guy if you've got X, Y, and Z to offer, or if you are representing X, Y, and Z league, team, organization. Um, when you don't have that to offer, now how are you treated?
Yeah. I brought up those 2 examples at the top, and then I didn't give either one of them. So I'll circle back to that now. But we talked about Ryan Warsofsky in the last episode. I was a USHL coach. He was in the AHL at the time, and TJ was running like a virtual summit. And he did a presentation, but he had to immediately run right after. So he's like, I'm going to drop my email in the Zoom chat. Anyone that has a question or wants to connect, reach out. And you've heard every coach that's ever presented say that and drop their email. And I've reached out to everyone that has said those things. And you want to talk about 4 out of 1,000, that's probably what I'm batting in terms of getting a response back. But Ryan responded, and he was like, shoot me your phone number, like, let's just chat. And we don't have to get into all the details, but he spent an hour on the phone with me when he didn't have to, and no one else in the industry was giving me the time of day. So that was one of them. And then the other one that I would like to highlight, because when I wrote the article in 2020 or 21, when it happened, it probably went out to 6 people. So the 20 people that listen to this, there'll be a few more that get to know that this person is a good person. And I think this podcast and this platform is about highlighting some of those people. And so I applied on a whim to be the assistant coach because it's public, and it's always public with the NTDP. And I saw that they were hiring for an assistant when Dan Muse was coach. And I was like, I'll just put in a resume, like shoot my shot. See what happens. And didn't expect to hear anything back. Probably had applied other years to the NTDP and maybe heard nothing, or applied to other openings in different levels and heard nothing. So I wasn't expecting much as a tier 3 coach in the USPHL. And I was sitting at dinner in October of that year, and I was at dinner celebrating my mom's birthday, so I didn't answer the phone. And it was like a number that wasn't saved to my phone. So I let it go to voicemail, left a voicemail, checked it after dinner, and it was Dan Muse. And I'll never forget it, and I'll never stop talking to people about it because I didn't even make the interview process. And I'm sure 100 or more people applied for this job. And he called me, so I'm assuming he called everyone. And he's like, Drew, you didn't, like, we've picked the guy, or we've moved forward in the process and we've identified 5 or 6, whatever he said. And he's like, you weren't one of them, but one, thank you for the time for applying and sending me your written stuff and what you have going so far. Like, read a few of your posts, like, keep going, whatever. And that's someone that is being, not doing. So 4 out of 1,000, Dan Muse is in that 0.4%. So I'll kick that to you.
Yeah, those are good examples to highlight people that are just the same person no matter who's reaching out to them. And it's probably no shocker that both of them are in the NHL now. Like there's probably a reason for that. And not because they respond to the right people who reach out to them, because it's likely very enjoyable to be coached by them. And it's likely very easy to learn from them and to get better under them because of the way they treat humans. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I mean, look at both of them. They played at Stonehill and Curry. They played Division 3, Division 2 hockey. Like they're not former NHLers that have this like lengthy pro career that sort of they can rely on. So their edge is being great people, being a great human, and that's allowed them to get to the highest level of the game now. Um, what it makes me think of is kind of a similar thing, but the inverse of it. And we talk a lot about this when I say we, just like people in coaching, involving players. Like when you are recruiting a player, and there are a lot of players that will say, for example, to me or others in Division 3, I'm really focusing on Division 1, really would like to play Division 1, but I understand it's really difficult. And if I don't have that opportunity, I'm absolutely going to play Division 3, and I'd be interested in your program. Or maybe I wouldn't be interested in your program, but let's take the example of I would be interested in your program. Those kids, those players tend to have a really good grasp on where they're at and how difficult it actually is to play at the highest level of college hockey. And they're not closing any doors, and they're certainly not turning their nose up at anyone who's in Division 3. And it feels like, although I don't have the exact numbers on this, it feels like a lot of those kids end up playing Division 1. And it's not to say that they're playing Division 1 because they're good people, but if someone in Division 1 wants to know what this kid is like as a person, it's not going to take them long to find out, oh wow, like Johnny actually treats everyone well, not just me because I'm coaching in Hockey East. Like everyone I've talked to, his old coaches, even some Division 3 coaches, some junior coaches, they all say the same thing. He's just an enjoyable kid to be around and treats people well. That's one kind of example or one path. The other thing that I've seen or we've seen is kids who you text them, and I shouldn't say kids because they're young adults, but you'll text them and they'll say, I really want to play Division 1. If it does, I'd play D3 as a backup, but I'm pretty set on playing D1. Like, yeah, I'll keep in touch. I'll let you know, but not really interested in D3 right now. Come now, summertime, spring, it seems like those kids always end up in Division 3. And again, not because maybe they haven't treated people as well as they could. I think it plays a role. But the bigger part for that aspect, the bigger reason to not go about things that way and to not do, which I'm sure these kids I'm talking about in the second pool, I'm sure they don't treat Division 1 coaches like that.
Uh-huh.
They're going to respond to Division 1 coaches and be like, hey, absolutely interested, would love to be love to talk to you more, learn about your school, whatever. Every year there are coaches, and it's not just Division 3, but that go from one level to another, from one league to another. You never know if that coach that you blew off in the fall because you didn't want to play D3 or you didn't want to play in whatever junior league is now at a higher junior league that you do want to play in, or is now at the Division 1 level where you would be interested in going. And the short-sightedness of people to treat those just based on the level they're at and not understand that, just like you as a player that wants to go from prep to the USHL, or from from whatever junior league to Division 1, other coaches want to do the same. And that guy that you don't want to talk to because he's in Division 3 could be in Division 1 next year. Or that coach that's in Tier 2 or Tier 3 juniors that you don't want to go play for could be a Tier 1 USHL coach next year and you had no clue. And it's something that you're outlining of how you see it in the coaching industry, and it happens with players, advisors, and other coaches too, in terms of how they treat other people. And it's really short-sighted. That's the word that comes to mind for me. And it's something that I would say is just all around bad practice and should be avoided. You should be treating people based on who they are and not what they can offer you. And that should go across the board. It shouldn't matter really whether you're 18, 19 playing and talking to coaches, or whether you're like Dan Muse or Ryan Warsofsky, their age, and dealing with a younger applicant. So that it just kind of reminded or made me think of the same sort of thing, but with younger players and navigating where you want to go to school or where you don't want to go to school and how you deal with it. Really similar to what you just is the last thing I'll say. Like, you've gotten and I've gotten a lot more no's than yeses in the coaching industry, from other coaches in terms of getting a job, not getting a job, having an opportunity, not having an opportunity. So for Dan Muse to call you and be like, hey, we're moving on with someone else, it doesn't hurt your feelings. Like, that's a reality. And the same thing goes in the recruiting process. Like, we don't bat 1,000 in recruiting players. So when a kid tells us like, hey, I'm not actually interested in Tufts, like I'm gonna look a different direction, like I don't get my feelings hurt. Like, of course I understand. Like, I was a kid once looking at schools, and some you like, some you don't. And the better player you are, the more options you're gonna have. So the transparency is super important. You're not hurting anyone's feelings. It's actually more annoying to just be ignored and to not hear back, or to have a response that, yeah, I'm interested, like, but not right now, one day down the line, whatever, like to just push the ball down the road. Like, be honest, be upfront. You're better served by Dan Muse calling you and telling you, like, I don't have an opportunity for you right now today, than you are for him to say, like, hey, thanks for the application. I'll circle back in a few weeks. Now, like, you're sitting there going, like, maybe I am in the mix. Maybe I could get this job. So the transparency piece, it's a little different than maybe what we were initially talking about, but it's just as important. Like, no one is hurt or should be hurt by a no. Everyone understands it's part of jobs and industries that only one person gets the job, only one team wins their last game of the year. Like, we all understand it's part of it, and being honest and transparent and upfront is super easy. It doesn't hurt anyone's feelings, and it actually helps you and everyone in the long run.
Yeah, the piece that I want to pull out for coaches that are listening to this, that you can tell your players, I learned this one from my coaching mentor, but the question is, what if I, being me, or whatever coach that's talking to you at a showcase that you don't want to talk to because they're at the ACHA level and you want to be a D3 kid. But what if that coach beats you to where you're going? And if you can frame that up to players, I think it gives them a pretty good indication to kind of change who they're being and change how they're acting. And hopefully it changes fundamentally who they are being. And you can layer into everything that we've said on this podcast, like treat people with respect regardless of their status. Just fundamental law of love and being a good person. But anyway, without getting too far into that, like,
Wait, can I add one thing on that?
yeah, go ahead.
Like, stick with that example of ACHA and D3. So there's like 80 something D3 schools. And then I don't like say there's another 100 ACHA schools that this player might be talking to as well, potentially talking to. So there's 80 D3 spots for this kid. That means there's like 80 coaches that he can make a good relationship with and try to get in on. If you add the 100 ACHA schools to that list, now there's 180, and you never know which of that 100 ACHA might be in Division 3. So you've just increased your odds of getting to Division 3 by virtue of just being a good person and responding and fostering a relationship with someone. So it doesn't just help you in terms of like being a good person and having people say good things about you and building a good reputation. It could quite literally increase your odds of getting to that next level that you want to be at, like you said. So I just want to throw that in there.
Yeah. Increases your luck surface area. Luck being like an air quotey type thing. But yeah. And then the other thing that I wanted to add and to like become aware of is like stopping and pausing when you're feeling some of these things or you're saying some of these things internally. It's like, why don't I want to talk to this coach of Grand Valley State with my tier 3 players? Like, why would I prefer to talk to Mikael Bryan at Tufts? And it's like, sure, it's a status thing, but it's like, peel back the layers on yourself as a person. Like, where does that come from? And how can I stop being that? Because that's below 200 destructive energy. And that's like, you're a worse person because of it. So like, what things do you need to unlearn or deprogram? And then where is the root of that coming from? Just to get like, maybe we end on that to get a little deep and philosophical to leave you with something to think about. But if you have thoughts on that, go for it, and then we'll just wrap it.
Well, I think with that, like a lot of times that, if we're sticking with players, and I'd say it's true in coaching too, and it's in an analogous way. We want the highest level. We want the sexiest rink, the nicest facilities, the coolest logo over the opportunity. And as a player, you want to go to some Division 3 school over an ACHA school because you're told that that's a better level and it'll look cooler to have NCAA next to your elite prospects, and you'll be able to brag about the free meals you get or whatever you get. That maybe, I mean, that's not even true. ACHA gets that too, and we've talked about this. ACHA teams can and do beat Division 3 teams. So, like, I guess you want that. You think that that is better, so you strive for that. What you're not recognizing is that maybe there's better opportunity at the ACHA level for you. And we may have talked about this before on the podcast. I don't think we have, but a question we frequently it's turned into player podcast right now. But a question that we frequently get asked is players that are maybe coming out of U18 or prep or a first year of juniors, where do most of your players come from? Where would what's a good league to play in? And it's probably very unsatisfying for anyone that just wants like a quick answer. But the answer I always give unequivocally is wherever you get the best opportunity and wherever you're going to develop. That's the best junior league to come from. Because if you go play in the NA and you play 70 minutes and you get almost no opportunity throughout the year to showcase whatever you can do, it's awesome that you play in the NA, and that's probably a ton of fun. But I have maybe 7 minutes a night to be able to see you play, and that's if you're in the lineup. Go take a different league, a tier 3 league, and you could play power play, PK, and 29 minutes a night. Maybe I don't want you still. Maybe we don't like the way you play. That's possible. But at least I know what I'm potentially getting with you. and I'm able to tell right away, hey, he can do X, Y, and Z really well, and we should be on this kid. So the same goes for coaching opportunities. You can set out and say, all I want to do is coach as a head coach in Division 1. But if there's not a good opportunity for you to do that, and getting to that level would mean sacrificing maybe like real opportunity to succeed or have a stable job or whatever it might be, then maybe Division 1 head coach isn't the best thing for you. Maybe being a Division 3 head coach is, or a junior head coach is, or pro, or I don't know. But I think it's so easy to get stuck on like the level, the league, the name, and not actually look at the opportunity in front of you. And sorry, the other thing I left out was development. Where are you going to get better? Like the reality of any level, whether it's prep, juniors, college, is that you should continue to get better, because that's ultimately going to help your team win if you can get better. So if you are not going to develop at a really high level because you're going to be too far down the totem pole for coaches to invest time in you, is that really best for you for 1 or 2 or 3 years of junior hockey? Probably not. When you may have the opportunity to go somewhere else and be much more of a contributing member and have the opportunity to truly develop year over year or month over month, like prioritize that. So that was an aside, but it just, you got me going now on that with thinking about, prioritizing level over other things that mean a lot more than just the logo or just the league that you get to play in.
Yeah, I actually have something on. Do you have like one more take in you?
I've got plenty of takes in me.
Okay. So what it makes me think of, we've kind of talked about interviewing and like whether it's with Henry Ford or us interviewing with coaches. The thing that you said that I want to pull on is like a question that my coaching mentor uses this phrase, like throws people in a blender. And the the question that I get asked in interviews as a young coach, that when I answer, I start to get looked at cross-eyed, or like interviews wrap up pretty quick, because it's just not something that we're programmed to hear responses almost. And I don't like cliches. If you've listened to this podcast enough, I don't like buzzwords. I just tweeted a little cartoon thing that I saw today about play north, play fast, play whatever. But anyway, the question that I get asked, and I'm sure you've been asked, is like, well, where do you want to be in 5 years? Or what's your end goal? What's your dream? Like, as if like the level is important to a lot of people. So I get why it's asked. It's a popular question. It gets perpetuated. And I think they want me to say, well, I want to be in the NHL, because that's what everyone says. I want to be at the highest level. And the answer that I give is I want to be around the best people, and I want it to be a very good, aligned, purpose, mission driven fit. And when I go into what that looks like, and I'll spare you of all of that today, but like when I dive into that, they just want the like play fast, play north, I want to coach in the NHL answer. A lot of them. And that's, again, we haven't really gotten into the shit test thing, but when you're your authentic self and you give that answer and someone doesn't want that answer, it's a pretty good indication that you're not going to be a fit there anyway. So if you give your actual genuine who you are answer, you shouldn't coach there. You shouldn't coach with that person, and it should end, and the interview should end quickly. And all of those things are meant to happen when you're who you're really being instead of doing. I can say the doing bit. I can say, I want to be in the NHL, and that could lead them to believe, oh, he's driven, like this is what I want. I could do that all day, and I could be non-integrous to get a job, but I'm literally still Ubering and door dashing and writing on the internet to anyone who will listen to me about coaching and not coaching somewhere, because I will just be who I am in an interview instead of do. So kind of full circle with that. If you have thoughts, if not, we can wrap there.
Yeah, like eventually that answer will lead you to an opportunity that you'll be happy in instead of saying I want to coach in the NHL and then you get the opportunity and it's not aligned with the mission you want or it's not driven by the principles that matter to you and you're going to be unhappy there. And I don't have the exact same answer. Not because I don't agree with yours, but just my
Mhm.
response generally is when asked that question is I want to be working with the best players that I can. If that means NHL, cool. If that means U18, awesome. I don't know. The best players that I can. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what level it looks like. And I don't actually care. I want to work with the best players that are motivated as possible. Um, that's ambiguous, obviously, and it's not indicative of like I will do anything it takes to coach at this league or at this level. Um, this has one more, this got my wheels turning on one more thing.
Go for it.
I'm reading a book called, I think it's called The Last Amateurs by John Feinstein. And it's about college basketball. And it's old. It's old. It's 25 years old from like 99 00. And he's following the Patriot League in basketball, which is Army, Navy, Bucknell, Lafayette, Lehigh, Holy Cross, and I may be forgetting one school.
Dang, that's pretty good.
Um, so this league I did not know was founded on it was founded for football on the same principles as the Ivy League. No athletic scholarships because the Ivy League needed non-conference opponents to play, I believe in the 70s or 80s, and they didn't want to play any schools that offered athletic scholarships. So this assortment of schools, and there were some other ones. Fordham was in for a while, and other schools bounced out, whatever. But it's these seven schools. Colgate, that's the last one I missed. So those seven schools are in the Patriot League, and this guy follows the league around for a year because he had been a reporter, he had followed the NIT, NCAA tournament, written about it, but he was like, and this is so funny to read now because it's just gotten worse. But in like 99, he's like, these kids at like Kentucky or Duke, like they're not student athletes. Like they're gone for a month in March. How can you possibly say they're students? And compared to these kids at these Patriot League schools that like if they even make the NCAA tournament, they're probably one and done, and they are missing class that they will have to make up. All these things. But the point of where I'm getting at is that I'm only like a couple 50 pages in, a couple chapters in, but he's asked some of the coaches, a lot of the coaches in the league did coach at Kentucky as assistants, Washington, big time Division I schools. And he's asked some of them, like, do you miss that level of athlete where they're so good, they're going to play in the NBA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a couple of coaches have very similar responses that one, these kids in the Patriot League will work as hard as anybody I've ever coached. It doesn't matter that they're not going to play in the NBA. They will work harder than some of those kids because they know this is all they have. And two, working with them because there's no like end goal of NBA or professional basketball, they're willing to do anything it takes from a coaching perspective, not just working hard, but learning and getting better and improving. They're willing to take whatever those coaching criticisms or recommendations are in stride and actually try to implement them the next day. Whereas if you've been a projected top 5 NBA pick for the last 5 years since you were 12 years old, why should I listen to this new assistant coach or this new head coach that I've never played for before? What's he have to provide me? I'm already good. So it makes me think of like as much as maybe the Patriot League isn't the SEC or the ACC or the Pac-12 from a coaching perspective, these guys 25 years ago were bringing to light that this is really enjoyable coaching. And if you care about just coaching and teaching and improving and mentoring, is a great place to do it. And it doesn't have the appeal of athletic scholarships and massive sold out 20,000 stadiums. Um, but it does have at the heart of it what coaching and teaching should be all about. So it just a different sport and different level, but it highlights a lot of what we've talked about already.
Yeah, I resonate with that a ton. A ton. But we'll wrap there. Share the show if you got any sort of value. Yeah, and we'll just see you on the next one.